Shalom everybody. You are in for a very special and different Pulse of Israel today. Usually I give over my own program, but today I'm going to be sharing with you an interview that I was interviewed on the podcast of a friend of mine, Chanale. She has a podcast called The Weekly Squeeze. So first of all, everyone go check out Chanale's podcast and sign up for it. Here's the interesting thing about that podcast. I didn't know what direction it was going to take, and neither did Chanale in the questions that she was asking me. She had no clue the amount of stories and the depth of those stories that she was going to get out of me. Believe it or not, one day I will be writing a book about everything you will be hearing in today's Pulse of Israel episode that is really me being interviewed by my friend Chanale on her Weekly Squeeze podcast. Enjoy. And if you are not yet a subscriber to Pulse of Israel Daily Videos Podcasts, go to pulseofisrael.com and click to sign up. And if you like this video today and you want to help us get it seen by more people, just click on the donate button so we can help it get seen by many more people. Enjoy. And I would love to hear your feedback specifically about today's episode, about any one of the topics discussed. Here we go.
Avi. Hi, what's up? You're on the Weekly Squeeze again. What's going on?
Shalom, Chanale. It is such a pleasure being on the Weekly Squeeze. Thank you so much for having me again.
Baruch Hashem. I am going to share something that I found on the internet about you from back in 2006. I was actually living in Israel that year. And that's 18 years ago is it 18 years ago? When Gush Katif was expelled. Around that era.
Yeah. Summer of 2005 was the expulsion of
Right.
10,000 Jews from Gush Katif in the northern Shomron.
So I was there. That was the year I got married. My grandfather flew in from Crown Heights to protest. I watched some stuff on Tisha B'Av, just heartbreaking. In any case, this is an article from the Jerusalem Post, and it says like this. Avi Abelo, a religious soldier from Efrat serving in an IDF demolition unit, abandoned his post on the Lebanese border last week in protest against what he called Israel's morally corrupt leadership. Abelo had his doubts when he received his call to reserve duty. Expelling Jews from Gaza and northern Samaria caused the war in the north. We taught our enemies that terrorism works. So I did not like the idea of fighting under a chief of general staff and a prime minister who were responsible for this expulsion. But ever since I've been a kid, I've wanted to be a soldier in the IDF. Said Abelo, you were 32. You grew up in New York. You immigrated to Israel in 1990. The last straw, says Abelo, was Prime Minister Ehud Olmart's recent comments to Reuters that the present war in the north would create the momentum for launching the realignment plan, which includes the dismantling of tens of settlements in Judea and Samaria. And here we are, I literally have the chills, dealing with the same garbage. So fill us in. I've tuned out to Israel politics lately, but catch me up.
Wow. Okay. So that was the summer of 2006, a year after the expulsion of 10,000 Jews from Gush Katif in the northern Shomron and the destruction of all those communities. And like the media, they didn't really quote me properly in that interview. They took the quotes and their editorial line to fit it as they saw fit. The story is actually much, much greater than as they portrayed it in the headlines back then.
I mean, you sound like a Gibor. I have no issue with how you came across.
Oh, well, let me tell you more. It's much deeper. It's much deeper because, again, I, as a 10-year-old kid, all right, this is something I talk to people and especially youth and collegiates when I speak to groups. As a 10-year-old kid, I was given a homework assignment. And I know this because when I was a soldier in the Israeli army, I was rummaging through my parents' basement and I found this homework assignment that for whatever reason I kept, my mother kept, whatever. So I guess it was like fourth grade, 10-year-old kid, homework assignment. What are the 3 dreams that you want to accomplish in life? Okay, I was a 10-year-old kid. Dream number 1, I want to move to Israel and live in Israel. Dream number 2, I want to serve in the Israeli army and defend my people. Dream number 3, I want to be rich so I can give a lot of tzedakah. All right, I was a 10-year-old kid and I had those 3 dreams. And I like to tell people, Baruch Hashem, I succeeded in fulfilling my first 2. I'm still working on the 3rd. So you can understand that I've always been very motivated on both on a religious level and a historic level, understanding how blessed we are to have our ancestral homeland, and that we are able to defend ourselves, a blessing that our ancestors did not have anywhere else in the world.
So you've been zealous for a long time. You moved to Israel and you became a soldier, and you're telling me about this story where you watched what happened in Gush Katif.
Yes. So again, I proudly served in the Golani Brigade as a young soldier. Then for reserve duty for Miluim, I was put in a special demolition unit. And still to this day, I'm now way past the age of having to serve, closing in on 50. Please God, Be'ezrat Hashem, I still continue to serve whenever I get called up. And as I told my commanders, so long as I am useful to my unit and give added value, I will continue to serve to be able to defend the Jewish people and the land of Israel. So that is Avi Ebulo. When I was caught, and then again, I experienced the expulsion of Gush Katif. I was there. I literally left my wife and kids in order to sneak into Gush Katif, which is a whole movie of itself. Tried for a month to sneak in.
Speaking of movies, I watched this film about the basketball game that was played the last day, something of that sort, from the teens' perspective of how they were going to win the game, but at the same time lose their city. And that was very emotional. Also, did I read correctly when I saw that a woman burnt herself to death? I don't remember that.
No.
For Gush Katif. Yeah, I saw it on Telegram. Someone shared today.
Now? Current news now?
No. When at the expulsion of Gush Katif, a woman was demonstrating. She set herself on fire. Does that ring a bell? Yelena Bosanova burnt herself to death in protest against the disengagement of Gush Katif. All right. I don't know. Anyways, but back to the story. The disengagement of Gush Katif was very traumatic for Israel and for Haredim.
Right. So that's my movie, Home Game. And if you haven't seen it, watch it.
What do you mean that's your movie?
You're telling me about that movie, not knowing I produced it? That's my movie. That's what got me into media. I was an organizational psychologist. I opened an international firm's office in Tel Aviv, and I was working there. And then I left the job, took a leave of absence in order to sneak into...
You gave the kids cameras?
No, the movie story is a whole different program. It's a whole different story.
1 second, they filmed. I remember the kids were filming themselves at that basketball game.
So no, I was there in the community of Netzer Chazani because I was an English speaker. I volunteered to help in the whole media effort and be a spokesperson for Gush Katif to the international media. When I was there, unfortunately, the news at the time, again, we're talking about 2005, the evil plan. Unfortunately, politicians do this. Unfortunately, establishment media are owned and they put out agendas, and this is a whole different issue. So they were all putting out the message that the settlers and the people of Gush Katif were enemies of peace, and they were going to literally use guns and shoot Israeli soldiers in order to stop the expulsion plan from taking place. So I was there on the ground inside, and people heard I was there, and they donated money in order to buy me a video camera so I can actually have a video camera and get actual footage that can be used as evidence of what really was going down there on the ground, so people would not have to be reliant just on the official establishment media. And again, everyone, year 2005, no smartphones, right? No smartphones, no social networks, no Facebook, no YouTube, nothing. Social networks at the time was text messaging. That was it. So I had like a hand video camera, and I was only able to use the footage after they were expelled from their homes and I returned back to my home. In any case, when I returned back to my home after they were expelled, I said, I have to get the message out about who these people were and what they went through. So I went to I raised some money. I went to a friend, and he made a little 4-minute clip of what happened in that specific yeshuv of Netzer Chazani. And you could just Google it, or don't go Google it. Go to Israel Unwired and .com and search for last hours of Netzer Chazani. You'll see that video. That video went super viral. Again, all we had back then in social networks was media and text messaging. That 4-minute video was seen 50,000 times in 2 weeks. I had to find again. I had to find. I had to find a website. I had to find a server. 2005. All this stuff wasn't out there for the regular Joe Schmo to be able to do. And then just via text messaging and emails, 50,000 views in 2 weeks. With the success of that, I saw, oh my God, people, this is really hitting a chord. I said, I have to make a full movie of who these people are and what they experienced. So I went back to my video producer and I said to the editor, and I said, can you make me a full video from the footage I gave you? He goes, what are you, nuts? You have 4 hours of footage. You're running around like a crazy mashugana. You have no story. You have no characters. I can't make a movie out of that. If you're serious about making a movie about what these people experienced, then go back to the families of Netzer Chazani and ask them for their home video footage. So I was mashugal davar. I was crazy. I'm like, I got to get the message out to the world who these people are and what they experienced. So I started going around the families of Gush Katif, of Netzer Chazani, and asking them for their home video footage, which was gold. That's their last memories of their homes, of their livelihoods, of their families.
They were so happy there.
I'm a guy, I have no media experience, no movie experience, no production experience, no marketing experience. I'm just an organizational psychologist asking them for their home video footage, saying, I'm going to make a movie about your story. But they were crazy enough to trust me. I gathered over 80 hours of home video footage from, I think it was 17 different families. And I went back to my video director, my movie director. I said, here you go. Make this movie so that even the biggest leftist in Tel Aviv won't be able to turn the channel, and he'll have to watch until the end to be moved by who these people are and what they experienced. That was the exact directive and goal I gave him. I'm not a movie person. I don't know what he was able to do from all that footage. And then he used his magic and edited Home Game. And I didn't have the money. I went deep into debt, but I said, this has to be done. And we made the movie, and I screened it all over the world. And still today, it is the most watched movie on Gush Katif. And it gives across, like you said yourself, the story of the youth, the teenagers who fought on the basketball court at that exact time of the expulsion and the destruction of their communities to try to win their basketball tournament. At the same time, they were trying to save their homes and the land of Israel and Gush Katif.
I watched it on Tisha B'Av. I did not know that was your film. No, that was the only thing I watched because I was so sick the rest of the day. And it really, first of all, the fact that it was captured that way, the fact that the cameras were rolling, I mean, that is stuff that could have been never seen and never felt and never re-experienced. So that's just magic, that's just gold right there. And also here we are all these years later. And I hate to say it, I was telling my husband as we were driving to Yerushalayim yesterday, I said, it feels like a pretty calm summer because we haven't had a war. And then I was thinking, but at the same time, the demonstrations haven't stopped. The nastiness in the media with the left and the right and the politics and the American politicians throwing their anti-Semitism into the rink. It just seems overall like we haven't really made much progress, despite the fact, of course, hang on, Israel's thriving. You've done a tremendous amount for Israel's public relations. What I'm saying is the tension is still at what feels like an all-time high.
Yeah, listen, on a historic level, there's always something happening to the Jewish people. And Baruch Hashem, we're a resilient people and we overcome, and we have external challenges and internal challenges. And with it all, we're overcoming it all. And I look at everything as we're going to come out of this stronger and more united than before. That's how I look at what we're going through. And that's the message I give over to everyone while giving them the actual analysis of what's actually going on in terms of the protest movement going on today. But so going back to the Lebanon story, all right, it's a good thing you brought up Gush Katif, because that was the summer of 2005. And again, I was there. I experienced it. I was there when the soldiers came. I actually was running around like a journalist with a video camera. The preparation that the state of Israel made in order to expel 10,000 Jews from their homes in Gush Katif and destroy all 21 communities was insane. It was planned for more than a half a year, maybe even more than a year. The army used organizational psychologists to brainwash soldiers to be able to pull babies out of their mother's arms and expel them from their homes. To that level of the psychological brainwashing and preparation that the Israeli soldiers were prepared. Not only that, in terms of, you could think about the amount of money put in the preparation, they took soldiers from all over the army from courses where if they'd say no, they would be expelled from their courses. That was one of the psychological ways they made in order to ensure that soldiers would take part and actually do this horrible, horrible job of expelling fellow Jews from their homes. They created special army bases. They had the best food. They had swimming pools. They gave them special outfits with Israeli flags on hats, on vests, on their uniforms. The amount of money invested in expelling Jews from their homes was tremendous. Not only that, and I saw this with my own eyes, and you saw it in the movie, if you remember, the soldiers walked around the communities with maps of the homes with the names of each family's house. So when soldiers came to a house, they knew exactly which family lived there, the names of the family members. That's how prepared the Israeli army, the state of Israel at the time, prepared the Israeli soldiers for expelling Jews from their homes. Okay.
I just want to explain to people listening who don't really have a clue why this would be so challenging. It's not a natural thing for Jews to remove Jews from their land here in Eretz Yisrael. Your average soldier is your average citizen. So for them to have to, move their brothers and sisters from their beds, essentially, it's just contrary to everything we are as a nation who love one another. You know what I mean? Despite our politics. That's the first thing. The second thing, something dawned on me. So you're saying, but had the Supreme Court, if they didn't have the power they've had up until now, this wouldn't have happened, right?
The Supreme Court had the power. Court cases were brought in order to stop the expulsion plan because it was a total negation of all rights for all 10,000 Jews who lived there. They lived there legally. The state of Israel supported the building of all of the communities in Gush Katif. Not only that, Gush Katif, the resettling of Jews in Gaza, and again, historically, Jews lived in Gaza. Go to the Gemara, folks. There are rabbis in the Gemara from Gaza. Okay, Jews used to live in Gaza. No one should tell you that Jews have no place living in Gaza. So historically, we've lived there. It was a labor government. Yitzhak Rabin was the prime minister who established the first community in Gush Katif of Netzer Chazani. He was there for the groundbreaking ceremony. It was labor, left-wing governments who established the Gush Katif Gaza Strip settlements. No one should ever say it's a right-wing agenda. It was labor, left-wing governments that started and supported the Jewish resettlement in the Gaza Strip. Hence, when it went to the Supreme Court to petition against the negation of the rights of all Israeli citizens by them being expelled and their homes destroyed and the communities destroyed, the Supreme Court allowed it. It went to the Supreme Court. The activist Supreme Court, as today, existed back in 2005, and it just shows you how the Supreme Court is very much not about rights or looking out for the little man. Not only that, I was in many protests at the time that the police and the attorney generals and the Supreme Courts took our rights away from protesting. Buses were coming down from the north. The police and the attorney generals stopped the buses and turned them around, forbidding people from going to protests. Like how much against people's rights is that? That was totally given a hechsher by the Supreme Court, by the attorney generals, enforced by the police. We had protesters who were planning blocking roads. They were arrested and in jail for months for planning block roads.
But what I can't get over,
this was all done with the support of the Supreme Court, with the support of the attorney generals, with the support of the police. You see how the legal system and everyone. I want everyone to know I'm a big optimist, and if you're not living in Israel here, Come make aliyah. You're not supposed to, we Jews are not supposed to live here in Israel because of any government, any politician, any Supreme Court. We have a mitzvah to live in Israel, and it's our duty as Jews to be here to develop the land of Israel, to be in Or LaGoyim. You not being here is allowing the dark forces within the Jewish people to have this power and turn the state of Israel into something it's not supposed to be. We have to be here. The more from Torah-oriented, believing Jews living in Israel, the future is up to us, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting for us. Don't wait for Mashiach. Bring Mashiach. So with everything I'm telling you about the reality of Israel today, what we experienced then, what we experienced there, do not dare think to yourselves, oh, that's the reason I'm not going to come live in Israel. No, especially because of that, you're going to come and live in Israel. Because you're not here, it's allowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have those powers, do what they're doing, because not enough emunah-based, Torah-loving Jews live here that our votes count to make the better difference and make Israel the Or LaGoyim it's supposed to be. Israel is a wonderful place, fabulous place. Everything going on is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and your message should be not, oh, that's horrible. What a country. I'm going to stay in New York or in Boca. No, you're like, that's going on. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's letting that go on. And this is 75. And here we're living 75 years of this miracle of Israel. Every single day of our living here is a miracle. Every single war is a miracle that we still exist. You are negating HaKadosh Baruch Hu's bracha of what he's done for us, focusing on the miraglim, the 10 miraglim, instead of focusing on the 2 miraglim. Say, of course we have to go to Eretz Yisrael. That's our land. And come home. And with all of that, we see that the justice system, and this is why we need judicial reform, has one set of laws according to the left ideological agenda, and one set of laws according to the believing-based, Jewish-oriented, right-wing ideological agenda. That's why judicial reform is so important. So going back to Lebanon, again, at the time, I was looking at what was going on, what happened in Gush Katif. I'm part of the Northern Front. Every miluim, every reserve service, we were taught the next war is going to break out in the north. The next war is going to break out in the north. That's what we were trained. We were trained to fight a war in Lebanon. Then we were called up in 2006 for the summer of 2006, the Second Lebanon War. And again, I went. I'm a fighting soldier. I'm the first one to run in next to my officer. I believe serving in the Israeli army is not a duty. It is a privilege. It is a zchut. It's a kiddush Hashem, being able to defend Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. We're not just defending Jews here, but having a strong, safe Israel allows Jews everywhere to be safer. So I'm the first one to run in next to the officer to fight and defend the Jewish people in the land of Israel. And I went up north to do that, even though I had no faith in the political system and no faith in the IDF higher command. When we were there, I was on the border, and as I was there with each day, my unit was not being sent in. We were being told we're going in. We weren't sent in. Next day, going in, not sent in. And we were hearing all the stories of what was going on with all our friends who were already fighting inside. We were not allowed to shoot. We were not allowed to shoot at terrorists if they were shooting from mosques. We didn't have food in there for us. Our soldiers were surviving without food because, again, the stupid leadership of the Israeli army at the time decided that peace is in our time. We're never going to have war in enemy territory anymore. They outsourced all the food to catering companies. So the army had no way of bringing food to Israeli soldiers during the Second Lebanon War. We were in there starving. The amount of horrific leadership things that were taking place was mind-boggling. We weren't able to win the war. On top of that, the media was parroting the message from the government and the army that we created a 10-kilometer sterile area from the border into Lebanon, that things were going good. We're winning the war. I was on the border, right? Guess what? We had a soldier from our base stuck 500 meters from the fence, pinned down by sniper fire. The army did not let us go in to extricate our soldier from our base. Meaning they were lying to the Israeli people, to the Jewish world, that we had 10 kilometers of sterile area. We had to wait for nighttime in order to go in and save and extricate soldiers not stuck under sniper fire 500 meters from the border fence. All right. The whole war was a sham. It was horrific. And on top of that, remember I told you about the maps with each family's name in Gush Katif, the summer of 2005?
Mm-hmm.
And remember I told you that every reserve duty I went up for training, they said the next war is going to be in the north. Guess what? The maps they gave us to go into Lebanon were more than 10 years old. Our soldiers were not prepared for the actual situation of the ground of what Hezbollah had prepared with tunnels and villages in Lebanon since they last produced those maps. We were going into Lebanon blind. Our soldiers were blind. Our units were blind.
I'm hearing that Israel is more. I'm hearing that Israel was literally more concerned about accommodating the Arabs than their own citizens. That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly. Now, here we go. So here we go. All right. So it was in this reality that all of a sudden, the Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert, at the time announced that, again, I'm waiting to go in and fight and do the best I can as a proud Jew and a proud Israeli soldier. And all this was coming out, and I was learning about all, and I was going crazy. And then on top of that, Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, and again, Google the news, he said this, as reported by the Jerusalem Post, they got this right. Ehud Olmert announced that the whole purpose of the war was in order to prove to the world that us having an internationally recognized border will allow us to expel all the Jews in Judea and Samaria and destroy all the Jews of Judea and Samaria, just like we did in Gaza. That's what he said. He called it Tochnit Hahit Kansut, the coming in plan. And that was the logic of the war. It wasn't to beat Hezbollah. It wasn't to protect Israelis. It was to prove to the world that having an international border gives us the international legitimacy to defend ourselves and hence pull out all the Jews and give over Judea and Samaria to our enemies. And when he said that, I went to my commanders and I said, this is insane. We're not fighting this war to win. Our hands are tied behind our backs. Someone has to scream to the Jewish people in Israel that our lives are being wasted. We should have a ceasefire right now in order to save Israeli lives and save the lives of our soldiers being killed in a war we're not able to win because our leadership is not letting us win and it's not fighting it to win. And someone has to scream that to the world. So I said, I'm going to do that. So I went to my commanders and I said, put me on trial because I have to leave base and start telling the world this message. I didn't refuse any order because we weren't told to do anything. We were sitting on base just waiting. My unit never ended up going into Lebanon. But I went to my commander and said, put me on trial because I knew what I was about to do. You don't do. It was in the middle of a war. And I said, this is ludicrous. I'm the first one that wants to run in there and fight. But we're not fighting. We're getting killed for no reason. And my commander said to me, Avi, you're insane. We're not putting you on trial. Just leave. We're removing you from the unit. So instead of going back to work in Tel Aviv, I ended up coming home. My wife was happy to see me, obviously, because I was at war, supposed to be fighting in Lebanon. And I didn't go back to Tel Aviv. Instead, I went and protested every single day in front of the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem with a huge sign that read, Olmert makriv kedei lahachriv. Olmert is sacrificing the lives of Israeli soldiers in order to destroy all of Judea and Samaria. And every day, more and more people were joining me at this protest. And word started getting out. I started getting interviewed. I started getting invited to television interviews. I started getting invited to radio interviews. And then there was the brother of a friend of mine was killed in a rocket attack in that war up north. Now, what's the crazy part of this? Again, shows the total idiocy of the leadership of Israel at the time. This was a unit that was inside Israel. And inside Israel, we had no protection. So when a rocket fell exactly where the soldiers were sitting outside of a kibbutz in the north, and he was killed by this rocket fire. His friend is a colleague of mine and a fellow soldier from my yeshiva, from my unit. I went to the Levaya in Har Herzl, which is only 5 minutes away from where I was protesting in front of the Prime Minister's office at the time. And at the funeral, the sister gave a heart-pounding eulogy basically screaming from the top of her lungs exactly the messages I was giving, and basically called out, and this was live streamed at the time on all the media networks, calling all Israeli soldiers to refuse to continue serving in the war because we were being led out to slaughter for no reason to win the war. And in order to do this, in order to destroy all the communities in Judea and Samaria. Not minutes, look, it's literally seconds later from her eulogy being broadcast across the media channels, I received phone calls from all the television stations, all the radio stations, canceling my interview because they didn't want. But when it was just me protesting, then it was okay. Then I was a news item. But now that it was broadcast as a heart-wrenching eulogy to the whole Jewish people, they wanted to shut down the story. So all the interviews were canceled. And again, I'm getting all these phone calls while I'm still in the cemetery, at Har Herzl Cemetery, at the funeral. And the next phone call I got was from the army. What was the phone call from the army? You're a deserter. I'm like, what are you talking about? They say, you a deserter. You left your unit in the middle of war. I'm like, no, I didn't. I was there ready to fight. We weren't being sent in. And I went to my commanders and told them we're losing this war and losing lives of soldiers for no purpose. And someone has to scream that out loud to the people and protest against it. So put me on trial because I understand democracy. And I know if you go against the rules, you pay a price. That's democracy, not break the rules and then get away with it. Like, unfortunately, too many people in Israel today think. I said, and they said, just leave the unit. We're not putting you on trial. So they said, wait a second, you're okay with being put on trial? I'm like, yes, I asked to be put on trial. I understand that's the purpose. I broke the rule. I have to be put on trial. They go, okay, when can you come up? I said, I'll come up, be put on trial tomorrow. So that's what I did. And she was shocked out of her mind because usually real deserters, they're tracking them for months and months and months until they actually find them. The army never had someone like me who literally asked to be put on trial, understanding I'm doing something that shouldn't be done, that I don't want to do, but I felt forced had to be done. Like we learned from Chazal, she'ein ish tenaseh liot ish. When there isn't someone doing what needs to be done, do what needs to be done. So, and to me, I was furious at my commanders because they totally lied. They tried to save their own toches by throwing me under the bus, even though I was totally upfront with them and wanted to pay the price for doing what I knew shouldn't be done.
And you followed
in any
through.
case, went up north for my trial in the army, and I went back up to the northern border. That's where the base was. And again, the war was still going on. The war wasn't over yet. I was treated like a pariah for the first day on base because of the news. I was now put out in the news as a deserter, right? A deserter, that I was looking after my own toches. I'm horrible. And then that's how I was treated on army base by everyone who looked at me and in all the different interviews. I had to go through an interview process on different levels until I reached the actual army tribunal by the head officer of Northern Command. And after the first interview, I already said to everyone exactly what I told you. I didn't want to do this. I'm the first one to run in and fight and defend the Jewish people in the land of Israel. But because of reasons A, B, C, and D, this war was a sham. We're being killed for no reason. I have no trust in the army leadership, no trust in the political leadership. They are killing us. This situation is going to be worse after this war than before. And I said I did what shouldn't be done because someone had to say it. And little by little, they all said, listen, we agree with everything you said. Okay? They agree with everything you said, but you don't do what you did. And I said, I know, but someone had to do it. So that's why I'm willing to pay the price. So all of a sudden...
By the way, I just want to tell people listening that you're not in a jail cell. You're actually in your home.
Yes,
in case people are curious.
This was 17 years ago, right?
You never know, people, who knows the things people believe about Israel.
Right. So the attitude towards me changed like that. All of a sudden, I was given all the respect in the world on the army base. One of the people who interviewed me introduced me to the army rabbi, the base rabbi, said, Rabbi, this is a tzaddik. Take care of him. Find him a bed. You don't know. You can't imagine what this guy has just done. Take care of him. And again, with each interview, I was given all the respect in the world, even though, again, I was being labeled a deserter by the media at the time. And then I went up to the tribunal from the high command, Northern Command, gave the same message. He told me the same message. I agree with everything you said. You don't do what you do. And I was given jail time for 3 weeks in Kel Hashesh. That's one of Israel's main jails. And honestly, I had no clue how long I was going to be serving in jail. Literally, when I left home for my trial and I gave my wife and kids kisses goodbye, I had no clue whether I was going away for a year, for 2 years, for half a year, for a month. I had no clue. This is uncharted territory. I had no idea. So the fact hearing that I was only going to be put in army jail for 3 weeks was like such a sigh of relief. Like, okay, I'm going to be home soon. Right?
It was worth it.
It was totally worth it. And again, the other major component of this story is the day of my trial. I was on the army base for 2 days. I got there. The war was still going on. The second day was the ceasefire. And I warned about the ceasefire. I said the ceasefire is going to be horrible. It's going to allow Hezbollah to grow and be more of a danger than ever before. It's going to be like everyone's going to push it like, oh, we got a ceasefire and it's going to be wonderful, which to this day they still talk about. But what people don't pay attention to is Iran allowed Hezbollah to have hundreds of thousands of missiles in southern Lebanon to this day because of that horrific ceasefire. So it was a horrible ceasefire. In any case, I was there when the ceasefire was made, and all of the high command soldiers who were in Lebanon were coming in to the high command base that I was in, of the office of the high commander, and I heard them complaining. They were throwing out and cursing at the top of their lungs at all the horrible way that this war was done. No support, no food, not able to fight, old maps. They were screaming all the stuff I already knew because I was on the inside. And one officer walked up to me. This is like a very, very high officer in Northern Command. He walked up to me and he goes, Avi, when I heard about you, I thought you were the scum of the earth and a deserter. Now that I'm on base and I've heard your story from everyone else, I want to tell you, we need an army full of you. All right. This is from that's like the change that happened from the high commanders at the time after learning the truth and hearing me and talking to me and learning about who I am and why I did what I did.
Well, if the army and the soldiers if their heart is not in line with the cause and with, like you said, their commanders and their chiefs and the people directing them, then it's just a military. But the Israeli army's a completely different thing. Our experience here is so personal and it's spiritual, and you can't just use, like you said, children, essentially children, men, fathers, brothers, as political pawns to push forward an agenda that's not in the best interest of Israeli citizens. The whole thing just doesn't come together. It doesn't gel, doesn't vibe, like the young people say.
Right. And my conclusion from that is, again, every single Jew listening to this who is not yet living in Israel should start making their Aliyah plans and come here to Israel, because we're only going to make the difference when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees we want it.
Right. Two things before you go, though. 2 things before you go. Number one, just recap for people listening.
I didn't finish.
I know you didn't finish, but I don't want to miss 2 things. I know we're going to pitch people moving to Israel, but I don't want to miss anything. I want to talk about your conference.
No. 2 things about the story. I didn't finish yet.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, chapter 2. Chapter 48.
Chapter 48. So chapter 48. So first of all, jail. So actually sitting in jail was very interesting because, first of all, you are literally locked up in a cell, right? But in a cell with like 20 guys. We were given 2 choices. Either we do what's called avodot rasar. We're doing like dirty work all day long, kitchen work, weed work, whatever, just cleaning the base all day long. Or you could decide to sit in the Beit Midrash and learn Torah. So what do you think I chose? I decided to sit and learn Torah in the Beit Midrash. That's how I spent my 2 weeks in jail, because I was given a week off early due to good behavior.
Nice. Okay?
Good behavior. All right.
The wife raised you well.
Right,
for whatever it's worth. Yeah.
Even though she's like, wait a second, I'm suffering at home alone. My kids were little at the time.
What do I get for good behavior?
I was sitting learning Torah for 2 weeks in army jail, and she's all alone at home taking care of the kids. So that was the situation at the time. But Baruch Hashem came home, and I was kicked out of my shul when I came home because they weren't exactly happy. Because again, I was being branded a traitor. and a deserter. And here's the important thing, because this is very, very timely for today, because some people have asked me, Avi, wait, so what's the difference from today? Because today you have Israeli soldiers from the left saying, oh, we're not going to serve in the Israeli army. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You're talking about the Havdel Shamayim Va'aretz, the difference between heaven and earth. Today, they're saying, because we disagree with this government, we're not going to serve, right? Ever. They're not giving an order. There's no war. There's nothing. They're saying now they're stopping to serve because they disagree with the government. And it's basically a loyalty on condition, as we say, al t'nai, right? I wasn't like that. I was like, let me fight. I want to fight, but I have to save people's lives right at this moment. And I was only nikudati, saying right now our soldiers are being killed, and in order to save their lives, I have to do what I have to do and pay the price of doing something you don't do. I wasn't showing my loyalty to the state of Israel or the loyalty to serve in the Israeli army because of a political agenda. I was about one nikudati, one specific thing about saving our lives at that point in time. It happened to be surrounded by ideological things. But if they are, regardless of Olmert's thing, if we were actually fighting that war to win, I would have been fighting that war. But we weren't fighting that war to win, and we were being killed for no reason without the kalim, without the tools to be able to win that war. So that's the major difference. So no one could say, "Oh, Avi, I heard your story. Well, you're the right. What's today's left?" No, they have basically conditioned their loyalty to service and to the state of Israel by them having a government that goes according to their agenda. Because everything about this judicial reform protest is about taking down the government. It has nothing to do with judicial reform. The protest was started years ago. Ehud Barak is on video from 3 years ago saying we're planning these things. And it just so happens that this judicial reform fell into their lap, and they're successfully using it to divide the country. So today's leftist refusal to serve is a conditional refusal based on a loyalty to a government ideology. That was not my position at all. Mine was about saving lives. And as I said, still to this day, I still serve in my reserve duty. So that is the story of Gush Katif, my movie Home Game. If you haven't seen it, go to israelanwire.com, search for Home Game or Gush Katif, watch it, show it to your kids, send it, share it with everyone you can. And then the follow-up story of the summer of 2006, a year later, the Second Lebanon War. You got a lot.
Well, you have your homework. It's all cut out for you. You also can go listen to the Pulse of Israel podcast, where Avi has a recap or the full recording from the convention that you had last month, where you got together with a lot of think tanks to discuss anti-Semitism and what we're going to do about it, and Israel's public relations problems, and just the things that we need to do. But essentially, the message for my audience is make Aliyah and join the forces that are fighting for the actual physical land of Israel and the spiritual soul of Israel. And and that's the only way we can.
Amen. And let me throw in another action item from that conference, because again, the whole conference was focused on what mostly the whole organized Jewish world is ignoring, and that's the Jew hatred that is the core of this whole Palestinian national movement. Meaning, if you don't understand it yet, all the information is out there from their own mouths that their zeal to destroy Israel is basically that, to destroy Israel. It is anti-Semitism. It's the biggest Jew-hating movement today. Anyone who supports the creation of a two-state solution is basically supporting anti-Semitism and supporting giving money to organizations like the Palestinian Authority, like UNRWA, to Hamas.
And blood libels and weapons and
right.
bad money and Iran and all of it.
Right. And hence, one of the action items we're coming out of this conference is that our kids, your kids, whether in high school, whether in college, they do not have the information to be able to be confident in their position about the Jewish people in the land of Israel today, to fight against the lies that they hear every single day. I'll give you two short stories that I just heard.
And our defectors are getting more and more savvy, and the lies are getting more and more slippery.
And it's going to get worse. Mm-hmm. And it's going to get worse. All right. It's going to get worse, and they're going to get more support from the establishment world and from the Jewish establishment world. All right. Because our Jewish establishment and even the Orthodox Jewish organizations and schools are getting weaker and weaker. And I'll give you two stories from schools from high schools in New York City. All right. We're talking about yeshiva high schools. Yeshiva
By the way,
schools.
you have a great website. You have a great website. I'm just scrolling at it now. IsraelOnWire.com.
Thank you.
Tons of content
Yes.
on it. So yeah, I'll put a link.
Yes. So two stories from Jewish high schools in New York, Jewish day schools. Okay. One, I had a call. I had a call with a recently graduated young woman from a well-known high school in the Five Towns. Again, we're talking about a Jewish day school, modern Orthodox day school. She told me that she was called a Nazi by her history teacher because of her support for Israel. Okay, Jewish modern Orthodox day school, out loud in front of the class, called a Nazi.
I don't know what's more alarming, what she called her, or the fact that she's working in that school altogether.
Okay, but it was allowed. This teacher was not punished by the administration. All right. And then I personally know another school in New York City, another modern Orthodox high school, that they officially teach the Nakba because we have to teach our modern Orthodox kids
that makes me so
their
nervous.
narrative.
That makes me so
nervous. Our kids are, and even if they come to Israel for the year, not good enough. Not good enough. They are not given enough information to be able to survive on college campuses, whether to push away and not be affected by the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic atmosphere growing on these college campuses. And many Jews end up leaving Judaism because they're just brainwashed by all this anti-Israel, anti-Semitic messaging that they hear once they're on college campuses. So the importance of giving your kids the truth, the politically incorrect truth and proud, inspiring truth about the Jewish people and the state of Israel today, besides our internal shtuyot, like I was talking about. But overall, we are an amazing miracle. We're the most successful, we're the biggest success story of all of humanity. After 2,000 years of exile and persecution, we are the only indigenous people, only one in all of history, to return to our ancestral homeland and be sovereign in our homeland and be able to protect ourselves with our own army. The only one out of all indigenous peoples and oppressions in the world. We are the biggest success story that every Jew should be proud about. Proud. Are we a perfect country? No, because countries are run by people, and people are not perfect. So we have our issues to deal with, and that's why you have to come make Aliyah and live here and be part of the process of creating the Or Lagoyim that we're supposed to be. But the bottom line is our kids, your kids, no matter what high school they're going to, they're not only not being prepared, what's happening, the changes and metamorphosis that's taking place in Jewish day schools and high schools is the growth of the anti-Israel narrative seeping into our schools by our administrations and our religious teachers. So my action item is, if you have high school kids and you want to help them be prepared and be knowledgeable and confident and proud Jews, reach out to me. We are working on an initiative to reach out to the high school kids. College is too late. It's high school. We got to start infusing these kids that the Jewish schools are not giving them. They're not giving them. And sometimes they're getting bad messages in our Jewish day schools and high schools. So if you have kids that you want to help empower them and make them be proud Jews with the inspiring, politically incorrect truth about the Jewish people, the land of Israel, and yes, the state of Israel today, to know how to deal with the horrible headlines. And this is the second story. Just yesterday, I had a talk with an educator in one of these high schools. And she told me the following, and she used to teach Israel, but now little by little, the schools are not having her teach about Israel anymore. Like, that's part of the problem. They're getting the good people out and bringing bad people in. She's a good one. And she told me, listen, Avi, there are two levels of high school kids, or all kids, but she's talking about the high school kids that she's dealing with. There's the level of the kid who sees the horrible blood libels and lies from Bella Hadid and all these other social media influencers and stars, and they're so mad about their lies, but they don't have enough information to know how to deal with it. So that's one level. And the second level are the students, and here you're talking about from students who, when they see these horrible blood libel lies from Bella Hadid, they don't have enough information to even get mad, and they just believe it or just let it slide, and like it seeps in because they don't even have enough information to get mad. So your action item, you guys are parents, grandparents, high school kids, put them in touch with me. We want to build out a small army to empower these kids to have the proper education. And it's all based on Torah, folks. Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, Torat Yisrael, with three components of one thing. We have to empower our kids because our schools are failing them. And if you are a responsible parent or grandparent or friend, and this worries you as it should, please put them in touch with me so we can be in place to help them and empower them and make the difference and bring the geula, because it's up to us. Mashiach, we can't wait for Mashiach. Mashiach is waiting for us, everybody. Make that switch in your head. And that means we have to be active partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so that Mashiach then comes. And if the first and only thing to do, save your children and empower your children and inspire your children, not just with the day-to-day stuff they're learning in schools that's not really preparing them to be proud Jews going off into the world, and let them deal with the growing anti-Israel, anti-Semitic sentiment that, again, is growing and is going to get worse day by day. Do what you can to empower them and bring the geula. That's what I have to say.
Avi Abelo, the host of The Pulse of Israel, you are one of a kind. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for being here. I'm going to put all links in my show notes so people can reach out to you. Tiskala Mitzvahs, Mashiach now, and Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim.
Amen. Thank you so much, Chanale.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Take care.
Pulse
of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.